You know, guys, one thing I find funny about the Conjuring series is that every time a new movie comes out, it's always the darkest chapter in
the Conjuring universe.
Like, Conjuring 2, the darkest chapter in the Conjuring universe. Conjuring 3, you won't believe this, but it's the darkest chapter in the Conjuring. The Nun, the darkest chapter. Annabelle in space, the darkest chapter in the Conjuring universe. Anyway, guys, let's talk about the 10th darkest chapter in the Conjuring universe, The Conjuring Last Rites. Welcome to the RTS Yap Session, where you can listen to me go on and on and on about things and stuff. The Conjuring Last Rites.
The darkest chapter.
Honestly starts out much better than the third movie was. We're already off to a good start with the setup of the haunted house and the stuff the Warrens are going through. Good stuff. Has some horror in here that is unintentionally funny. Also has a pretty decent amount of horror that is actually pretty well done. Specifically there was one scene with a playback of a recorder on a TV. You guys know what I'm talking about. I actually thought that scare was pretty effective, and there's a few of those sprinkled out where it's like, okay, this is pretty good. It does a pretty good job with its character work. The Warrens throughout these Conjuring movies have always been kind of the heart and soul of it. The real life Warrens may be a different story. There's a lot of controversy there, but the fictionalized version of the Warrens in these movies is just great. Sometimes gets a little bit too out of hand with how crazy things get. It starts to feel like the Fast and Furious of the Conjuring franchise, when things are just going insane, like it becomes a little bit of an action movie towards the end. And when these movies really lean into that, like so much destruction and just mayhem going on, that's when I'm kind of like, not a big fan. But this one does have enough solid scares in it to kind of, I guess kind of win me over. There's a lot of ridiculousness in the movie, but there's still enough material in here that actually wins me over quite a bit. Leaves me wondering, who gave the Annabelle doll steroids? Who gave Annabelle Tren? She got roided out for that one scene. You guys know what I'm talking about. That was pretty wild. I was not expecting that. And overall, this is a movie that I would say is pretty solid. It's a pretty good watch. It's not necessarily as good as the first two movies, which I thought were great. First one especially is so good. But this movie doesn't necessarily get up quite to that quality, in my opinion, but it's still a pretty good time, and I had fun with it. Anyway, those are my thoughts on The Conjuring, The Last Rites. The movie is supposed to be the last Conjuring movie for now, until it makes a boatload of money, and then they just keep making these movies, and you'll have the next 50 darkest chapters in the Conjuring universe. But yeah, we'll just see where things go from here. Overall, pretty pleased with the movie. Had some flaws with it, but it was pretty solid. Let me know your thoughts on this movie in the comments section below. If you haven't seen it, I hope you enjoyed watching me yap about it. Bye!